Have you ever felt completely surrounded, trapped by a situation that just feels impossible? Well, tonight we're diving into a prayer that was forged in a moment exactly like that. From the You Need Faith in Jesus team, this is our devotional look at Psalm 59, a truly powerful guide for finding God's strength right in the middle of a crisis. Okay, so first things first, we have to get the backstory. This isn't just beautiful poetry on a page. This is a real-time life or death prayer. As this verse from 1 Samuel tells us, King Saul's soldiers have David's house surrounded. Their orders? Kill him at sunrise. The entire psalm we're about to walk through is David's prayer during that single, terrifying night. So how in the world do you even begin to pray in a situation like that? Well, David's journey starts with a raw, completely honest cry for help. He wastes zero time, does he? It's an immediate, urgent plea. He asks to be delivered from his enemies and defended, which literally means to be set on a high place, way out of their reach. And notice how he describes them. They're not just his rivals. They are workers of iniquity and bloody men. He sees the deep spiritual evil he's really up against. Now, this is a really key point. In verses 3 and 4, David makes his case to God. He says, "The mighty are gathered against him, not for my transgression, nor for my sin, without my fault." He's making it crystal clear that this is an unjust attack, and he's appealing to God as the only righteous judge who sees the absolute truth of the matter. And then David kind of pulls out the big guns. He escalates his appeal by calling on God's most powerful titles. Lord, God of hosts. That's the commander of heaven's armies, and the God of Israel, the God who always keeps his promises. He's not asking for personal revenge here. He's asking for divine justice. And that word Selah, that's like a musical pause. It's telling us to stop for a second and just think about this bold request. All right, so next, David paints this incredibly vivid, almost cinematic picture of his enemies. He focuses right in on what they're doing and their arrogant mindset. Wow. What an image, right? He compares them to a pack of snarling, scavenging street dogs. Now, in his culture, that was a deeply insulting thing to call someone. He says they prowl at night, and their words aren't just empty threats. No, they belch out hatred, and their lips carry swords, all aimed to kill. But it's this little phrase, tucked right into the end of verse 7, that reveals the root of all their evil. The reason they act with such vicious confidence is because they think no one is watching. They're saying to themselves, who's going to hear this? They're convinced God either doesn't see or just doesn't care. But then, everything changes. The psalm hits this dramatic turning point where the entire perspective just flips. We move from the earthly threat outside his window to the divine reality up in heaven. This is the absolute climax of the prayer. David stops looking at the dogs outside and looks up to God. And what does he see? God isn't worried. God isn't pacing. God is laughing. From heaven's all-powerful, sovereign viewpoint, these enemies that seem so terrifying are actually laughably pathetic. It's a laugh of derision, at the sheer absurdity of creation trying to rebel against the Creator, an idea we also see in Psalm 2. And as you can imagine, getting this new perspective, seeing things from God's point of view, it completely transforms David's strategy and his whole emotional state. The moment he sees God's absolute sovereignty, the panic just drains away, and he makes a conscious, deliberate choice. He still sees the enemy's strength, but instead of fear, he chooses to wait upon God. And why? Because God is my defense, or my high tower, my secure fortress. He decides to just wait safely inside God's protection. You can actually see the mental shift right here. David's focus just pivots. It moves away from the intimidating power of bloody men with swords in their lips and locks onto the infinitely greater power of his God, his defense, the God of hosts, the God of my mercy. When you put them side by side like this, his problem suddenly seems very, very small. And because his perspective changed, the picture of the enemy changes too. In verses 14 and 15, he brings back that image of the dogs. But now, they're not a terrifying threat. Now they're just a pathetic, frustrated pack, wandering around looking for food and whining because they can't find their prey. Their power has been totally broken in his mind. And so the prayer that began in absolute terror now builds to a climax, a song of certain praise.
I mean, the contrast here is just beautiful. Let them howl like dogs, David says, but I will sing. It's a choice. He resolves right there in the dark to sing about God's power and mercy when the morning finally comes. He's looking forward to the dawn of his deliverance with absolute certainty.
And this is how he wraps it all up. The psalm that started with a desperate cry, "Deliver me," ends with this confident resolution to sing to God, who he now personally calls, "Oh, my strength." He has made the full journey from fear to faith, from begging for help to promising his praise. So, what does this ancient prayer mean for you and me tonight? Well, David's journey gives us a clear, actionable model for facing our own trials. Here are the 4 steps from David's playbook. First, pray honestly. Don't clean it up for God. Bring the raw fear and all the specific, ugly details right to him. Second, consciously shift your perspective. This is a choice. Look away from the strength of your problem and focus on the laughing, all-powerful God in heaven. Third, wait in faith. Actively choose to trust God as your high tower instead of giving in to panic. And finally, number 4, resolve to praise. Make the decision right now that you will sing of his goodness when deliverance comes. And that leads us to one final thought. What is the howling dog outside your door tonight? Is it fear? Anxiety? A difficult relationship? An impossible circumstance? The challenge from this psalm is to stop staring at the threat and to start, right now, seeing it from the perspective of God's throne.